The cybersecurity landscape is full of single solution providers, making it easy for unexpected cyber threats to sneak through the cracks. That's why Fortra is creating a stronger, simpler strategy for protection, one that increases your security maturity while decreasing the operational burden that comes with it. This is all possible thanks to Fortra's best-in-class portfolio and deep bench of expert problem solvers. Fortra's integrated, scalable solutions help customers face their toughest challenges with confidence. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Fortra, Fortra. If your organization is ready to embrace edge computing, we have good news. The 2023 AT&T Cybersecurity Insights Report provides everything you need to know to get started. In the report, we identify the common characteristics of edge computing. We found edge use cases are rapidly coming online, and we reveal how to secure edge computing. Most importantly, you'll learn how to prepare for your edge ecosystem. Get your complimentary copy of the report today. Visit securityweekly.com/ATT Cybersecurity. That's securityweekly.com/ATT Cybersecurity. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Security Weekly listeners, now is your chance to join the InfoSec community as they come together at InfoSec World 2023, September 23rd through 28th, 2023 at Disney's Coronado Spring Resort in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Hear keynotes from Scott Shapiro, founding director at Yale Cybersecurity Labs, and Rachel Wilson, managing director and head of cybersecurity at Morgan Stanley. As a Security Weekly community member, you're able to receive 20% off your InfoSec World 2023 tickets using code ISW23-SecWeek20. Register today at securityweekly.com/InfoSec World 2023. All right, now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW327 if you want to follow along as we go through the news, or to check out any of the links to articles that we will be talking about today. All right, let's dig in. I'm actually not seeing some of the updates that I made here. I'm not sure what's going on. But the first one, I had some points here in this first item, because we normally don't cover so NAS is not a term that's generally in my vocabulary, but network as a service, NAS. But I thought it was interesting because Fortinet also had I think they lost like a quarter of their value in the public market. They had a big, their stock took a big hit. And I just thought it was interesting that, vendors like Palo Alto Networks and Fortinet and WatchGuard and others are going to have to be kind of balancing this software-defined world, the SASEs, the SSEs, and all this legacy stuff that's out there. Obviously, Fortinet has a lot of SMB, SME customers that probably don't have a whole lot of use for SD-WAN and stuff like that, and network as a service. I don't know. I don't know this market well enough, so maybe there's a down market thing there. But yeah, it seems like there's a balancing act to do between legacy stuff and emerging stuff here, technology wise.
I think that's always the case, right? Because we've got organizations who are sort of stuck in the middle. They've got half of their infrastructure stuck in like 2010, and then the other half is completely, cloud-based, or like you said, SASE or SSE, and it almost takes different skill sets to manage those. And of course, somebody who's really good at what they do, sure, they could do it, but did they have time to do that? And do they know the different tools? Because right now we don't have a lot of tools that span both environments. And somebody who might know how to really manage your mainframe probably isn't up on what's going on with all the updates in AWS or GCP or whatever.
I'm not sure they need to span them even, except for maybe at the highest levels of security. Like I've been hearing for 10 years now, ever since I started going to AWS reInvent, that companies have ended up with basically two different IT teams. And Ryan, I'd
Sure.
like to hear your experience with this being on the enterprise side, where, like Uber is kind of the classic example where they say, we've got 8,000 network printers in SAP. on the like back office, like traditional corporate IT side. But obviously all the stuff that manages the driver app and the rider app and all that stuff, like that's a completely different team, completely different infrastructure. Like the two hardly even meet.
Right,
Yeah,
and that's
I
great
agree.
if you're big enough to do that. But what about the businesses that aren't? And then you've got the two teams. How do you correlate that data? How do you use that data effectively? Do you just treat them as different swim lanes?
Yeah, I've seen a really weird, transition from on-prem to in cloud. A lot of companies that I've been at, they'll have a traditional infrastructure team on premise or in data center. But then they'll also have a presence, typically AWS or Azure. And it's been really interesting because companies I've been at, AWS, the account within there, you'll have a bunch of sub accounts depending on if it's business intelligence or your enterprise applications, and they'll be the managers of their account. So I'll find a vulnerability in AWS and see this S3 bucket is open to the world. And I'll go to our infrastructure team and say, hey, can you help us out with this? And they'll go, actually, that's the business intelligence team. Like, what do you mean? Like, you manage infrastructure, whether it's cloud, they haven't been trained in S3. They
Right.
shouldn't be standing up their own buckets. I get that it's abstracted, but yeah, I have experienced this really weird, two-thing approach where I shouldn't be going to someone who's a DBA and asking them about their S3 bucket or even letting them set it up. So it is really weird.
And that's so we talk about that constantly at work. I work for a SaaS security company, and a lot of SaaS products are run completely outside of IT, right? Like it could be the sales organization that runs with Salesforce. There might be SaaS use that the IT and security teams don't even know about.
Yeah, Salesforce for sure. And I think, going to Katie's point from before, with like small, medium-sized businesses, I think sometimes we take it for granted being on the leading edge of IT security, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners are, but there's a lot of lag time. Like there are some companies that have no presence in the cloud, haven't even really thought about it. We might talk about like Kubernetes, Docker and such, but there might be customers on early Windows 2000s. So while the industry, I feel like, is talking about things like API security, not starting to become a conversation, there's people that aren't going to talk about it for 5 years, maybe even 10 years. So there's really this huge swath of maybe they don't know what SASE is, or maybe there's not the risk appetite from the C-suite to change from, AnyConnect or any of these traditional VPN clients to go to
AnyConnect.
SASE.
Right, there's an if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they're making a business decision based on what has worked. And if the security or IT or infrastructure or whatever team isn't clearly explaining the business implications about what happens if X. And of course, it's a risk decision. Maybe nothing will happen. You just don't know, right? But if the technical teams, whichever ones of those there are, isn't explaining exactly why staying in the past is problematic and what it means for the business to run faster, to run more efficiently, to allow people access to whatever they need, then you're going to get companies that are like, okay, hands off.
Yeah, and it's a good point, Ryan. That kind of reality check. It's one of the reasons I love being faculty over at IANS, because I get these advisory calls. I do these advisory calls with just whoever IANS clients are, and yeah, I'll be on the podcast here. We'll be talking about LLM AI and stuff, software defined stuff, and then I'll jump on one of these calls, and this 40-year-old company says, hey, we just bought Tenable and did our first vulnerability scan ever. And oh my God, we have so much stuff. It's like, welcome to 2001, right? Like it's just, and the thing I don't know that kind of I lose a little bit of sleep over is I don't know what percentage of the industry that is. I don't know if that's 3% or 30% or 90%. But
I was going to ask if you had any quantification on that.
Well, of the calls I do, it's the majority. So, and that's obviously just a anecdotal biased,
Sure.
whoever happens to be IONS clients, and then however many of those IONS clients happen to talk to me. So that's like a slice of a slice of a slice of the, the total view. But it's more common than not. And the companies I talk to are much further behind than you would think, just by following the news, going to RSA, going to Black Hat, and looking at what people are talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
or listening.
We could cut it up however you want. Like, we can talk about companies with a security person, like not even talking about
Right.
companies that don't even have someone thinking about it. Yeah, and I think the consulting world, even in just the month I've been here, has opened that up to see, on-prem 2010 Exchange servers with these UIs from, what seems like the 90s. Like, that's just not something that was in my purview working at some of these other enterprises. So I think looking at the total, I don't know that a lot of companies have security people. So yeah, I can dice it up however you want.
Yeah, every now and then I'll get on a call with somebody who's very, very confident, and they'll say, as you well know, because you're a security expert, we're doing things this way, and it'll be like some horrible security stereotype that we outgrew like 20 years ago, like Department of No type era stuff, that some people spout out, and it's, man, I don't know where you're hearing this, but industry has moved on, man. We've moved on from that. Or somebody will come on and they'll say, I wish there was a product that could do X, Y, or Z. I'm like, that's in its 5th generation. Where you been? Come listen to my podcast. But yeah, we almost need a term for that, like security lag bias or something like that. Like for both sides of it, right? Like the assumption that technology hasn't moved on yet. People just don't keep up with the trends. And then the other side, people who do keep up with the trends but don't realize that there's this huge lag component, that there's this huge number of organizations. The folks out there say just patch, right? Or just it just seems simple to them, but the industry hasn't really figured it out yet.
Yeah, we can maybe define a metric of security technology dwell time. As we talk about dwell time and attackers in the environment, we might be going on 5 or 10 years for some companies.
Yeah, actually, the Gartner's hype cycle is not horrible for this. I feel like I feel like that is kind of a sobering way to look at some of this, because you look at some of their hype cycle stuff, and stuff on there, like in my mind, is fairly common and well adopted. But it's still like it hasn't flattened out in the hype cycle at all. It's still in the trough disillusionment, or whatever they call the place where
plateau of productivity, and yeah. Trough of disillusionment, I believe is the term.
Yeah.
I wish I had been the person to make that up, but.
All right, but maybe we don't have to worry about all this, because we can just get cyber insurance. So the next item on the list is Resilience raises $100 million in funding. Resilience, I believe, is one of these MGAs that will nitpick your cybersecurity program in exchange for better policy rates, I guess.
Yeah, if I can touch upon this a little bit, I was reading an interesting article this week that talked about cyber insurance really struggling, with all the claims and such. And from my experience, you answer a questionnaire, maybe they'll give you a discount, but it's like a point in time. Cyber insurers are starting to look at continuous monitoring, whether through security validation technology or other ways, either at the like MSSP level, MSP level, to have that real-time picture of security capabilities and determining if it's worth the risk for them to insure you. So I think this is going to change in the next couple of years because they're kind of at an inflection point where they're not covering much, or if they do, it's exorbitant. So I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, me too. And we've got a ton of these now. So this is resilience, and we also have Corvus, Coalition, At Bay, Alpha Secure, Mitigate Cyber, Cowbell Cyber, Notch, and some of these are actually acquiring technical companies. Like we had who was it acquired a external attack surface monitoring company. One of these folks picked one up. But yeah, some of them are basically doing with like what BitSight and Security Scorecard do. They scan your external stuff. That gives you a score, and that informs what they price on. We know it's not the most accurate way to estimate, somebody's security, to understand their security program and, the likelihood of them having to submit a claim. But I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation here. I think one of the few I've seen, Cowbell Cyber, really goes across the whole security program. So there's like an endpoint piece, a network piece, an external piece. All the ones I mentioned before are all internal pieces. So they're really looking at like a holistic, real-time understanding of your environment. So, and even that, I don't know if that's going to work. They call them cowbell factors.
Yeah, they're taking a page out of auto insurance.
Yeah, auto insurance, exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, good, Katie.
I think that's a good starting point, but even the scanning, it doesn't tell the whole picture, right? Because so much of it depends, and Ryan, you can talk about this so much better than I can. What do you have? What level of sensitivity is it? Where is it? Who's using it? What does it mean to the business individually? So there's so many business decisions that go into that if they're not incorporated, if that assessment, whatever it is, if it's external, internal, both, if that doesn't accurately reflect the business itself, you've got I don't know, maybe it's a construction company versus a financial service company versus a retail company versus a food, like a McDonald's, or those business requirements and business risks are so different. Yeah, you could say it all boils down to just keeping your business up and running and as risk-free as possible, but that's way too black and white to actually say, here's what we're going to base the efficacy of your program on. You checked all these boxes, you're good. This other company didn't, they're bad. That's not the complete picture.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's hard to do because it requires like a certain amount of read-only access. I know, Adrian, you worked on this with previous companies, but I think about the comparison of, like, for my auto insurance, I have to have an app that's always on, always has my location, which, like, I would never be okay with, but I'm willing to do it for a 30% discount. And maybe companies will have the same reaction. Like, what is that discount level that you get for giving read-only API, keys into public cloud or different parts of your environment to have some kind of continuous monitoring? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. If somebody like you is willing to go that measure, that extra step, that kind of says a lot, because you know so much more than your average person who doesn't even work in tech.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, you've got to drop here pretty soon, right?
Yeah, I have another 5 minutes.
Are there any? Well, I'll let you pick then. Anything you want to talk about before you have to head out?
Yeah, I think the Kubernetes one was an interesting one I was reading about this morning.
Yeah, number 16.
Yep. Yeah, it's the only one. I didn't recognize a lot of the names of funding and acquisition.
Yeah, a lot of them are new companies just coming out of stealth.
Yeah, 23 is interesting. Perimeter 81, I feel like it's been around for a while, but never really took off. I feel like they were SASE before it was cool, but people went to other companies like Zscaler and like Prisma
Perimeter
Access.
81.
So, what's that? Perimeter 81, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they were, it was VPN was the term they were using, and then ZTNA, and then they expanded from zero trust network access, which used to be called software defined perimeter, to to broadened out to more general SASE. So and what's interesting here is 14 months ago their valuation was $1 billion, so they became a unicorn in June 2022. So this is we haven't had a whole lot of examples that really showed us what the market correction was, but this one shows their valuation cut roughly in half.
Yeah.
But still not bad considering what happened to the market. We certainly saw cases where 70 to 80% of value. Like I think the crazy case was Cyber Reason lost like an entire zero. They went from like 2.3 billion to 230 million or something like that. Their valuation really got chunked down. But yeah. So that, or what would you think of the Kubernetes one? Because that seemed like something that affected a large number of deployments potentially.
Yeah. So for the Kubernetes misconfigurations, they did a story on the specific misconfigurations being around allowing unauthenticated access into Kubernetes clusters, and then also giving it, whether on purpose or by accident, public access. So between those two, this goes back to our conversation of enterprises have, these posture management type tools, and they have people with Kubernetes training, but then you have other teams that someone said, hey, we should use containers, and they were traditional infrastructure and they wanted to make it work right away. So they created rules that, allow basically a source ACL of the whole internet. And they would do something like, users who unauthenticated users typically have no access, but they would sometimes make it so that unauthenticated user has admin access. So the combination of those two things have just created a ton of issues that have made, and they'll do Shodan type scans to see the impact, and it was much bigger than I thought it would be. So we just have to remember that no matter what level of abstraction it is, you need to make sure it doesn't need to be public, and can just anyone access that cluster? And then do you have any monitoring around it? So they're talking more about like SMB type customers, maybe less mature for that, but it was a pretty big problem.
Yeah, I mean these are not small issues here. They're talking about 60% of Kubernetes clusters they researched were breached and had an active campaign with deployed malware and backdoors.
Crazy.
Like that's a lot of folks in IR mode.
Yeah, and there's really not, I mean, I know MITRE has some stuff around containers as far as testing them, and CISA has come out with a lot of really good guidance. But what does forensics look like? Like, I was trained on forensics of operating system and application and such, right. But I would need to learn like the artifacts and what the possible implications breaking out of the cluster. It just introduces a whole new skill set.
And the thing is it's generally in the cloud, it's way easier because everything is virtual, everything can be scripted, but yeah, you're right. Like there's a ton of new attack surface and different kinds of artifacts that you have to know to collect. You have to know where to look for bad stuff happening or for how attackers get in. Like all that's completely new. I would hope somebody's done that work. I kind of wonder what like a SANS 504 looks like these days. Does it still just talk about imaging Windows systems, and surely they've updated it, or maybe they have completely different classes on cloud IR and cloud forensics. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the scariest part too, in my experience. I feel like the industry has done a pretty good job as far as EDR agents on Windows machines. And that's great.
Mhm.
And that covers the majority of things. But I can't tell you how many conversations I've had of, well, our policy says EDR on everything. Is it on your Kubernetes cluster? Is it on your Linux box? Like, oh, no, 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 no. So you have no visibility, as far as a behavioral perspective on Kubernetes clusters. The technology is out there, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't happen, You just focus on the policy of EDRs on everything, and then it just becomes challenging, and you have to catch them from the beginning, because once all the clusters are up there already, good luck trying to get it retroactively.
Yep. Yeah, if you've ever had to deal with PCI, you've been asked by a QSA at some point if you had antivirus on your mainframe or your Solaris machines, or
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure you understand what you're asking right now.
Mhm.
But all right, well, we'll let you go, Ryan. Thank you for those insights and for spending some time with us today. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Great time. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Where'd Katie go?
I'm here. I'm not on screen right now, but I'm here. I'm still here.
Can we do
There
like
I
a
am.
side-by-side thing, guys? All right. Where should we go next? See, there's Endor Labs is kind of interesting because that's a $70 million Series A. And is this the one where, open source governance? So basically, like the goal is to just make open source more secure. So I'm not sure what the monetization plan is for this company. I'm not sure what the revenue plan is, but
Yeah, I think we touched on that last week, and it's a super interesting problem, right?
cover this
Because
week?
maybe it was something else. My brain does. I just read an article that I wrote 3 months ago and asked our PR person who wrote that. So obviously my memory isn't great, but there was at least some company we talked about, and it's a really interesting problem, right?
Yeah.
Because so much of software is built at least partially on open source, but then there's no money behind that, right? It's all volunteer. And I'm really curious as to this model too, because I was talking with a friend this morning about just the whole process of founding a company and starting a company and what it takes and raising capital. And it's more than just, hey, I have a good product. It's so significantly more than that. And it's really, really complicated. So this company, getting 70 million in Series E, first of all, that's a pretty hefty amount for these days. But secondly, without an understanding of how they're going to pay anybody back, like,
yeah. So
what do they have to sell to these investors? What's the problem space and the intent is great.
Maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Maybe this is just more of a classic SEA play where like they're not devoted to helping open source developers get better, but ordinary developers using open source, making sure that open source is secure, that they're, can detect vulnerabilities in it and prioritize that stuff. So it's more just a general like code quality, vulnerability management approach that just happens to be focused on open source, like we've seen from Black Duck was kind of a classic example there. And where was Josh Corman for a little bit? It was not Synopsys.
PTC.
It was a competitor with
Sonatype.
Yeah. Sonatype was another one that did this, or something similar to this, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like it's aimed at the developer because this release starts with, the dev productivity text. But that would mean if, again, I'm not sure exactly what the monetization model is, but if this is focused on developers, this is predicated on developers wanting to buy yet another tool.
This is
and
part
then,
of your CI tool chain. So your DevOps teams are buying this, right?
right. And that means potentially a different workflow, right? Because yes, I think a lot of developers are security conscious, but they're not security conscious in the same way security teams are. So there's a push and pull there between dev and security. And if it's a tool that can integrate seamlessly, I know we hear that term and it's marketing driven and all, but it's true. Anything that slows down the dev process is problematic. Yes, a lot of developers that I've talked to are acknowledged, compensated, bonus, incentivized by fewer bugs, fewer problems, but they're mostly incentivized by the product they're building, the product or the service they're building. So I think this is a hard market.
So it looks like I think the tough thing here is it looks like they're leaning on GitHub, and GitHub will already scan your stuff. GitHub already has features that will scan your code for issues. And this either, is collaborative with that. It's something in addition to GitHub. And I forget the name of the GitHub product that does the scanning for you, but every time you go to push code, like it's going to run all your tests and run the vulnerability scans, and that's when they do this. You're going to use GitHub Actions to plug their product in here, and they've got a scanner that just drops directly into GitHub, so you don't have to change your workflows. It's just another one of those checks that runs every time you go to push code.
Yeah, and that's really the only way it'll work.
Yeah, you got to do it that way, right? Yeah, there can't be another console they then have to log into. Yeah.
And the security team can't then come along and say, hold on.
You're either the platform or you plug into it these days, right? Which you know all about with your day job.
I know all about it.
Either you're the platform or you plug into it.
Yep.
Let's see. Yeah, proactive continuous security testing, Horizon 3 AI. Is this breach and attack simulation? Yeah, it sounds autonomous pen testing. Sounds like breach and attack simulation or some kind of variance on it. The fact that they don't say breach and attack simulation tells me that they are right now cringing as I say this, because they would prefer to use different terms, but automatically testing your stuff to see if security controls work is kind of like that's the market that emerged to do that. So I don't know if we're looking at a new market now. Horizon 3.ai will integrate pen testing, SOAR, and detection engineering into a security platform. Yeah, and I still believe strongly that we need something here. I wasn't terribly impressed with the first round of breach and attack simulation products. I was in that industry for a little bit, working for one of those vendors, and I think it got distracted and turned into another product that created busy work and kind of overwhelmed you with information, which is not the road that I felt like it needed to go down.
Yeah, I think the industry has sort of category, I should say. The category has floundered a little bit because its intentions were great, but there's a little bit of boiling the ocean that went into it because the problem is so big. Breach and attack simulation, right? Hundreds, maybe even thousands of ways to do that, right? To breach and attack a company.
One of the early products, it would literally calculate like every way somebody could break in, and it would give you that number on the dashboard, like a huge number. And I remember they showed me an early demo, and it's since changed. I don't think they do this anymore, but it would say there are 1.2 million ways you can get hacked. I was like, I'm not sure this is going to motivate security teams. I'm not sure this is what they want to see every morning when they wake up and they go to work, is that there's one. Like, what are you going to feel good when it goes down to 1.1 million different ways you can get hacked? Yeah.
Yeah. How how many hundreds of thousands do we have to go down for it to be a positive result? Even just thinking of it that way is mind-boggling.
And how do you defend your program with that? Like, you don't want management seeing that, right? How are you going to explain that? How do you explain you're doing your job, but there's also 900,000 ways that you can get hacked? It's just not a useful metric. Let's move.
I think it's meant in a sense to show how complex security is, but it's sort of a double entendre in some senses, because it says, oh wow, security can't protect our company from these million attacks, right? So it's having an adverse effect for non-technical audiences, or it could.
Yeah. Yep. So moving on, let's look at, so Silk, I thought was kind of interesting. This is one of those things where the description, I feel like, probably doesn't do it justice, but it doesn't really get me excited either. But they're talking about, let me find the best description here. So Silk incorporates AI, and I'm quoting here, these are not my words. Silk, this is the press release. Brace yourselves for press release language. Silk incorporates AI technologies to consolidate and contextualize findings from multiple detection tools, automates prioritization based on severity, asset profiles, and environmental factors, and predictively assigns fix ownership. So that's a lot. So, these findings from detection tools, so not vulnerability management tools. So we do have a whole market that tries to do this. Your Vulcan Cybers, your what was the one that got sold to Cisco? Kenna, Nucleus. All these guys do it for vulnerabilities. This is supposedly for detection. So this would be stuff coming out of your XDR, your EDR. I mean, this is something that I thought XDR was supposed to do, but kind of like a smart Jira for all your operational security, all your detection and response tooling. Predictively assigns fix ownership. Shoot, like if we could have, like, figuring out asset owners is a pretty hard problem.
Yeah,
that's quite a claim. Like, what data do you have to feed it for it to be able to assign fix ownership? Is it consuming HR data and like Active Directory? Like, does it understand your org chart? How does it predictively assign fix ownership?
I mean, I think that's hard enough just as a standalone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We're starting to see, so after this news segment, we're going to have Ian Amit come on and talk about the company he co-founded, Gunbok.ai, which it tries to come up with, tries to automatically generate code to remediate issues. So instead of just reporting issues to developers, we're also going to hand them the code they need to fix it. They still have to review it. They still have to manually approve it. Like, they're not going to push it to production. They're basically going to create a pull request in GitHub, and you're going to review that and say, yeah, it looks like it's going to fix the problem. So it's interesting. We're starting to see companies that are trying to fill this gap where security tools are really good at telling you what's wrong, but not really great at fixing it. It's basically all up to you, right? All up to the security people to run around and figure out how to fix it, whether it should be fixed or not, and how to do that fix.
Well, I think I'm not sure that the industry is quite ready for that auto remediation. I mean, I can just say my own personal experience at the company I currently work for. We have an enforcement center. There are 100+ automated actions. I'm not talking about alerting and notifications, because that's on top of that. but over 100 automated actions that companies can apply. They can set them to run without any manual intervention and remediate issues, all kinds of issues across all kinds of assets. And we have a very, very, very low percentage of people who actually go there. For the people using the enforcement center, high percentage of people sending alerts, notifications, what have you, low percentage of people automating the remediation.
Yeah, and what we're seeing here, we've already seen people try to automate the remediation. Like I remember Rich Mogul, his startup Disrupt Ops, in the early days, they were talking, and we interviewed him a little over a year ago, but they had all this language around guardrails, like they would automatically manage guardrails in the cloud, and very quickly realized people are not comfortable doing any kind of like full automation, unless you're talking about maybe scaling stuff up or down, which the cloud was kind of designed to do in production. So now what we're seeing is it stops like one step short of full automation. Like it automates the suggestion that you can then approve and deploy, right? It's still going to leave that up to a human, because no human wants to be responsible for some automation going haywire and pulling down.
You don't want to be the person that says, I automated it and it broke everything.
Yeah.
So
any of the other funding look interesting to you? Otherwise, I was just going to move on from there.
Yeah, we can move on. There's a lot of funding. I imagine since we didn't have much last week, a lot of this is in reaction to the small conference happening out on the west part of the country right now.
Yeah. This is the Black Hat edition of funding here. We've got 12 funding announcements here, and
funny though, because RSA used to be the strategy and funding conference, and Black Hat used to be the product launch or feature launch or version release, and we've definitely gone, a little more on the corporate strategy side for Black Hat. We've been seeing that for years, really, but this sort of underscores it pretty clearly.
A lot of these are seed stage, so these are probably company announcement along with usually the seed round or pre-seed announcement comes with the company announcement or product announcement. So at least half of these are maybe also that.
Yeah.
So a couple acquisitions here. And just for folks listening, there are way more acquisitions than we cover, but a lot of them are professional services firms and MSPs and MSSPs. I just filter all that stuff out. There must have been 15, 20 of these acquisitions this week. And I mean, I've never heard of any of these small MSSPs getting consolidated and scooped up. Or these professional services firms, and also raising money. $10 million Series A for a professional services firm. I don't even know how that works, but there's more here than we have time to go over, and than I have time to prep for. So just to give you a little flavor around the 4 that we'll be talking about, there's actually a lot more. They're just not software products or like traditional startups. And honestly, We Hack Purple isn't really a traditional startup. That is Tanya Janka's startup here is primarily focused on training, which is yet another category, I think. We've seen training companies do very, very well in cybersecurity, but somewhere in between professional services and a software startup, we do have these kind of like developer training and employee security training companies all over the place now.
Yeah.
And SemGrep is a really interesting company as well. Know some other folks out there. We've covered some of their. They've had some very interesting releases. So also in the AppSec, they basically build AppSec tooling. So I guess it makes sense that they would also provide training, right? So now Tanya Janka's experience with training, they can train folks on using their products and on AppSec in general. So makes sense to put those two together. All right. We already talked about Checkpoint acquiring Perimeter 81 for $490 million. We mentioned 14 months ago their valuation was $1 billion. They had just made the unicorn club, but obviously the market realignment changed things there. But certainly doing better than several others that we've talked about that have had a much more severe adjustment in their valuation. So that still doesn't, like, what did they raise? Let me see. That doesn't look like a horrible exit for them.
No, I don't think so. I am curious in the larger community though, because there are a lot of companies that are sticking with their valuations of a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I know there's no uniform way to do this, and this depends on a lot of factors and auditors looking at things and in some cases refinancing and what have you. But if you're a private company, I just wonder how many companies behind the scenes are actually looking at their values declining and not saying a word, and what impact that will have on the industry, if any, really. That's kind of a question for Tyler, who is at a Black Hat this week. But it would be really interesting, I think, to understand what the trends are, what the averages are, what about companies who were at 2 billion valuation? Has that been halved? Companies who are obviously at 1 billion falling down into the hundreds of millions of range. We're still talking about a lot of money, but it's not the same thing talking about a $500 million company versus a $1.5 billion company. And there have to be some trends out there, and there has to be some VC doing their very, very best to look at those numbers. I just don't know if we'll ever see where they are or even be able to accurately measure it. But it sure would be nice, because we have all this historical data and very little current data. Because if you're a company that just fell off the unicorn list, if you become the infamous zombie-corn, you're not going to come to the market and be like, oh yeah, we were $1.5 billion and now we're at 620 million, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. It's I mean, we do know about Cybereason. They went from their valuation was in the billions. It was 2.44 in 2019. They raised again in 2021. I don't know if their valuation went up then, but then we heard recently that it got corrected to the less than $500 million. I forget exactly what the number was, but it was almost like just a zero getting lopped off, an order of magnitude getting chopped off their valuation. So that I think that's the more extreme case. I think it's more likely for security companies. Half, sounds like it's closer to reality, and that could change over time. If they can survive long enough for the market to recover a bit more. Yeah, I don't know if this correction is going to be permanent, or if security as a whole was just overvalued for a while. I don't know. Again, yeah, you're right. Tyler, questions.
Tyler, we need you. I will apparently forget it by next week too, so maybe I'll Slack him and say, talk about this next week.
So moving on here, we talked about the Kubernetes misconfigurations, that have been getting taken advantage of by the baddies. The new attack called Downfall. It's one of these can extract sensitive information protected by software guard extensions, SGX, Intel's hardware-based memory encryption that separates in-memory code and data from software on the system. So not the same as Spectre and Meltdown, but functionally, in terms of how an attacker would go after it and the attack vectors and everything, seems similar. You have to have access to the system before you can attack this. So, essentially your system already has to be compromised before this could be used to compromise you further.
Well, if you go by the law of averages, most companies probably are. So.
Yeah, and so, I'm not sure that, you should get that excited about this unless you are running cloud services, something like that, where you've got single large computer systems that are multi-tenant, that have customer data that needs to be segmented, then I would worry about something like this. If you've got two customers with encryption keys on the same system, then maybe you've got a problem. Or if you have some kind of service where they can execute code and maybe extract these encryption keys. So interesting. Most people probably want to be familiar with it because they're going to get asked questions about it from management who read the news headlines.
And only the news headlines.
And only the news headlines, not the contents. But
again, I'd like to have some data, and I'm never going to get it, on the average person and how they consume their news. As in, how many people actually read articles versus reading headlines and then claim they read the news. This is a more general question, has nothing to do with cybersecurity. It has to do with research and accuracy.
You know the answer to that question.
No, I'm pretending I don't.
You know. You don't
Very
want
sad
that.
day, very sad day. Hanging my head for those of you who aren't watching.
But if you're emotionally honest with yourself, you're protecting your sanity by lying to yourself.
I had somebody who I know who was a smart person, a pretty critical thinker, very open to different ideas, who read this one so-called news site called the Epoch Times. And they were trying to read, I don't know if you want to look it up, is frightening.
Okay.
And the source material, when they showed me this, I was like, what are you doing? Get that app off your phone. I can't believe this came pre-installed, and like it was insane. And I'm like, wow, this person isn't that much of a conspiracy theorist, and this person just literally had no idea. They saw a source, read the headlines, believed all of it. I looked up the founder and that person's history and was like, holy bleep.
Yeah.
This person was just like, oh yeah, this is a news source. I'm like, this is not news. No. The Inquirer was in grocery stores for decades. This is the same thing. It's just on your phone. Why can this exist? Why is this allowed to exist?
Yeah, it's I think so Michael Crichton had a term called the gel man amnesia effect, and it was named after I want to say he was a physicist who was kind of famous for or Crichton was giving him crap because so the effect is basically you have an area of expertise. You read a newspaper and you see that they don't know what the hell they're talking about in your area of expertise. But you suddenly turn around and you trust something from another part of the paper that's outside your area of expertise. So that's the amnesia part of the amnesia effect, is like if you know part of it is not accurate, if the quality, if the journalistic quality is not there, if the science is not sound, why would you trust any of it, right? You got to throw it all out. Especially the parts you're not an expert on, that you can't validate, right? So yeah, it's that's something I try and keep in mind when I'm reading things, that I'm not an expert.
Yeah, but then it makes it hard to trust other things. You have to do so much digging to actually validate sources, and who the hell wants to do that? It's tedious. I mean, I do, because I'm a nerd.
I do too. I go down that hole, and I am often disappointed with what I find.
It's so sad. I think we've just gone down a rabbit hole. We need a rabbit hole graphic, Gus. We totally need a rabbit hole graphic, and it's my fault, me.
Oh, all right. So let's see. We're going to wrap up here in a moment. MITRE has released Atlas. They now have many of these frameworks modeled after MITRE ATT&CK, laid out in the same way with the columns and the they're not really rows, but items, techniques under each column. And Atlas is for machine learning techniques. So OWASP also has an AI LLM top 10. So we're starting to see a lot of AI and ML threat models put together, which is great. It's education I think the industry needs. A lot of people, myself included, are just trying to keep up with all this stuff that's going on. And the LLM stuff, certainly the attack techniques are almost completely alien to anything that's come before. So if this is specifically machine learning, I don't know if it gets into like LLM type stuff, but I haven't really dug into this yet. But this is something.
It's so important. A lot of people, you and Tyler included, are very, very gung-ho on this. And there's obvious benefits to it. There's obvious productivity gains. There's so much good that could come from it, but there's also so much bad. And the people who are developing the AI, ML, LLM are obviously pushing to see what it can do. But we need to understand. Yeah. I mean, we really, really need to understand the implications, just like everything else. So it's great to see that people are stepping up and creating these models, because the promise is so big, but if we don't understand the risks either, it could bite us in the butt very soon if people don't actually understand the risks. I'm not saying don't move forward with it. I'm saying just know your risks, just like everything else.
Well, we'll have examples before long, because nobody's going to be 100% on security. So we'll a year from now, I think we'll have a better idea of what attacks look like on a lot of the new AI technology. We'll have examples, and we'll be covering it on the show.
But then we get into the whole issue of that we're just talking about, again, my little rabbit hole, integrity of the data. It takes so much digging. You can find it, and maybe we can use AI/ML to find it. But if you don't know about the integrity, the validity of the data, or even the algorithms, it might not be so obvious when there's a problem. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing if there's like a blatant kind of nation state style attack where, things are obviously wrong, but there could be some subtle, very nuanced things, and that's how disinformation works, right? Disinformation works best when it is highly, highly nuanced. And that's what could happen with this AI/ML for many contexts.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the concern, right? Like, are we even going to notice when something is
going to notice?
The types of attacks that are going to occur. Like, could we have situations where it goes years before we even notice that something's been manipulated, or, there's all kinds of, like you said, like there's subtleties. And we're not used to attacks being subtle, right? So, especially like state-sponsored stuff, like, subtle isn't going to earn you money. So we'll still have, the more, okay, I just received a ransom note, so I know something happened, on one extreme. But on the other, like the whole argument about TikTok and whether or not serving different content to people in the U.S., like there's some kind of nefarious plan behind that, especially with the stuff that's targeted towards children versus, how they serve the same service to children in the home country in China.
I mean, just imagine a scenario, if you will. A company is doing AI-assisted vulnerability identification, management, remediation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody comes in, messes with the algorithms very subtly over time to make sure that their consumers, the product is working so that it falsely identifies problems, making that company go down a rabbit hole, ignoring the real problems, then you could have hundreds or thousands of companies who have zero idea what their attack surface looks like. You do that to a big enough company.
Or you could take your favorite vulnerability that you want to exploit and somehow deprioritize it. You know, I found the machine learning models we were using to prioritize vulnerabilities, you could actually mess with that supply chain. I remember I tweeted something. You know, I managed to get a CVE pop up in a product that we used as to inform our machine learning model. You know, so it was like a threat intelligence product, and I managed to get a completely benign CVE that was not anything anybody should be concerned about. And because I started throwing out tweets about it, I was able to influence that threat intelligence and then influence our product. So I was able to, and that's one of the items on this list here. You know, if you look at this, you know, it does talk about backdooring ML models using poisoning. So technically, I was poisoning our machine learning model in that case.
Oh my God, the conspiracy theorists were right, Adrian. They were right all along.
I don't have any evidence of anybody doing that. I just proved that it could be very easily done. In that case, as easy as sending a tweet, because Twitter was actually a fairly reliable source of information. I think we talked last week or 2 weeks ago that InfoSec Twitter is kind of dead from many perspectives. You know, for at least you know, gathering intelligence, right? Like that part of it just kind of dried up and died. But yeah, at one point in time, it was a very reliable indicator as to whether a vulnerability was something you should be concerned about or not. You know, the amount of chatter about it online on Twitter. A few more things, and then I want to wrap up here. So Bloodhound Community Edition, they've redone Bloodhound. It's no longer an SPA running an Electron. It's a much more robust backend, and the Community Edition does mean that it's free. I'm sure if Sean was here, he'd probably have some words to say about it. You know, I suspect they probably use this a lot at Trimark, or he's at least very familiar with it. I'm not as familiar with Bloodhound apart from its purpose, what it's for. I haven't been a pen tester or a defender in a while, so I haven't had reason to use it. But yeah, new version of that out. New free version of that's much more robust. And number 21 was interesting. Google, not really a security thing. This could probably be more of a squirrel story. We could go ahead and throw up the squirrel story graphic. But Google will let you edit what can be found about you on their search engine. So now there's a workflow for removing results about you.
That'd be good. If it works, if somebody else can't go in there and then alter my info, that would be great.
Yeah.
Somebody else decides what I want and what I don't want. Now, making sure that there's some identity verification there would be awesome. I don't know if it's in there, but let's hope so.
Yeah, so it's not like a whole. There is a workflow. So you can submit a request. There's just looking at the website, there's an in progress, approved, denied, and undone. So apparently you can undo removals as well. So they've taken some of that into account. I don't know how you prove your identity, though. I have not gone through it yet. All right. And the final squirrel story here, we're still wondering if this giant sphere in Las Vegas is going to get hacked and messed with. And somebody reported early in the week that somebody had turned it off. So that's certainly one defense. Like, don't use it at all. Don't leave it on for people to mess with.
Just unplug. Just unplug.
But I also saw photos from our very own Mandy that it was on yesterday. So Mandy sent in some photos on our Security Weekly Slack that it was on. And DEF CON starts tomorrow. So we'll see. I'll be on vacation next week. But this time next week, we should probably know by then if somebody's succeeded in messing with it or not.
We will indeed. You will be practicing your lazy day, your national lazy day, next week.
My national lazy day will be all next week. All
nice. Well deserved.
And that's all I've got. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining me today. And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. But don't go away. We still have one more interview for you. Pre-recorded interview with Ian Amit, co-founder of Gunbok.ai, which is also in that Black Hat startup showcase. That's what it's called. Startup showcase. All right. See you next time.